It's basically February. It's probably February when you're listening to this. It's January 30th as we record, but basically February. So it's almost baseball season at this point. We are about to enter what is, in my opinion, the worst 2-month stretch of the year when you have no football or baseball that means anything. So we got our love-hates for fantasy baseball to kick off baseball season. We have 2 players at each spot, one that we love and one that we hate. And by spot, I mean each positional group. So catcher, first base, second base, third base, shortstop, outfield, and then pitchers. The rankings we are using to make our picks are for ESPN points leagues, because that's the kind of league that we play in. But we use different scoring because ESPN point league scoring sucks, just to put it bluntly. So if you're listening in our league, these rankings are the ones that will be in our draft, give or take, because things will move around. But quick disclaimer, when I say that the ESPN points league sucks, I mean they really suck, because these are going to be some pretty stupid rankings in here, particularly at first base. First base is just atrocious. Nothing else is horrible, but the rankings as a whole are kind of skewed towards that style of league. So pitchers especially are going to be propped up because they're more valuable in a points league. But we'll get to more as we go. Let's start at catcher. And Braden, who is a catcher that you love?
I'll go with Augustin Ramirez here. He's the number 138 player in the overall rankings, and he's the number 10 catcher. Last year's triple slash wasn't, super phenomenal. He had a 231 batting average, a 287 on base percentage, and a 413 slugging percentage. But he did have 21 home runs and 16 stolen bases. Additionally, the StatCast metrics are pretty nice for him. He was in the 65th percentile or higher in the vast majority of the expected metrics: expected WOBA, expected batting average, expected slugging percentage, exit velo, barrel percentage, and hard hit percentage. So there is quite a bit of potential for him to improve on those numbers. Additionally, he pulled 18.5% of his batted balls in the air, which is a good positive indicator. That was about the 60th percentile in baseball last year. The Marlins lineup still won't be great, but Ramirez had 72 runs and 67 RBIs in 136 games last year. Those numbers are definitely repeatable, and the advanced metrics indicate he's likely to record more hits and more extra base hits in 2026.
Yeah, I like Augustin Ramirez as well. He was a guy that I picked up off waiver wires last year, and he was my catcher for most of the year. And yeah, I think if we get, a bit of an uptick in power in 2026 mixed with his, I think it was 16 stolen bases last year, something like that. Yeah, that's fantastic for the catcher spot. So I love that pick there. I'm going to go with Hunter Goodman as the catcher that I love. He is the 163rd overall player according to these rankings. If you've listened to any fantasy baseball content of ours in the past, I do rankings every year. I did again this year. I have Hunter Goodman as my 99th overall player. So if I can get him at 163, I am very, very happy with that. He's a power hitting catcher, which is extremely valuable in fantasy baseball. He had 31 home runs last year. The expected stats don't fully back it up. He had a little bit of a Coors Field bump on the StatCast page, but he's going to drive the ball. I mean, he hits the ball hard. He barrels it up quite a bit. He's going to swing and miss. So in a points league where you have a full -1 for strikeouts, like in ESPN default league, which I think is why he's kind of buried a little bit more, he's going to hurt you in that. He doesn't walk a ton either. But in leagues like we play where it's -0.5 point for a strikeout, it's a lot more manageable. And so having a catcher that's going to play half his games at Coors Field and can hit 30 home runs, I think that's a great value for the 163rd overall player. And then, Braden, I'll send it back to you.
Yeah, you talk about the Coors Field bump.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I'll just chip in on Goodman real quick. You talked about the Coors Field bump. Last year, he actually had 5 more home runs on the road, only had 5 less RBIs, and had an OPS still above 800. So I think there's definitely a chance that those numbers are less skewed than they might appear on the surface.
And yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. There's just a delay on my end, so hopefully that doesn't keep up. But I'll send it back to you for a catcher you hate.
A catcher I hate is going to be Cal Raleigh. He's the number 10 the number 10 player and the number 1 catcher. And this obviously has nothing to do with his ability as a baseball player. It simply has to do with his draft cost. He was incredible last season, had 60 home runs, drove in 125 RBIs, and recorded a 948 OPS. However, you now have to take him 3 to 4 rounds before any other catcher. And the only other catcher within 58 spots of Cal Raleigh in ESPN's rankings is William Contreras. If you look at the rankings overall, some of the guys in the similar spots to Raleigh are Bobby Witt Jr., Kyle Tucker, Corbin Carroll, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and Logan Gilbert. I think catcher is a much easier position to make up later in the draft than shortstop. Outfield goes off the board pretty quickly in a lot of these leagues, especially when you're starting 3 of them, and you lose a chance at an ace. You might still get one of those guys because Raleigh is going on the turn. But if you're asking me, would I rather have Cal Raleigh and one of those guys or 2 of those guys? I would go with 2 of those guys and take a catcher later on.
And yeah, 10th overall is a little ambitious for my blood as well. I'm looking at my rankings. I have Cal Raleigh at 25. So I would much rather spend a third round pick on him than a second round pick on him, or even a first round pick if you're in, a 12-team league and you're taking him 10th overall. So yeah, I think that's a little bit too rich. The name I'm going to go with is Drake Baldwin, the Braves catcher. He's the 98th overall player in these rankings. I don't hate Drake Baldwin. I just wouldn't want to spend a top 100 pick on him because I don't know that the usage is going to fully be there. He had 446 plate appearances last year as the Braves' primary catcher, but he's not going to catch 150 games, and I don't know that there's enough time at DH for him to be more than a guy that plays, 2 out of every 3 games. So for that reason, I'm not super in on him. Looking at my rankings, I have him right around 130, I believe. Yeah, I've got him at 124. So I have no problem with where he's going in regards to the other catchers. It's just I wouldn't want to spend a top 100 pick on him.
Yeah, I tend to lean the same way with Drake Baldwin. Really, like overall, I think a lot of the numbers are repeatable, but at the same time, I don't know how often he's going to, I don't know if he's going to be playing 140 games with Sean Murphy there. So I think it's a little bit steep there.
As for first base, which I said is the easily wonkiest part of these ESPN rankings, just for the record, I love every single first baseman at these values. So my hate is not a rankings base; it's just where he's ranked among first basemen. So just an FYI. But Braden, who is your first baseman that you love?
I'm going to go with Vinny Pasquantino here. I wanted to cheat and take Ben Rice due to his catcher eligibility, but didn't feel fair to take him here. Vinny Pasquantino last year had 32 home runs. He had a great slash line that I forgot to write down, but I have his batting average of 264. Apparently, I forgot to write down his RBIs and runs as well. But looking at the advanced metrics, he's in the 65th percentile in pretty much all the expected numbers. Got a great whiff rate and strikeout rate as well. So you're not going to be losing points on those strikeouts as well. I think with him going as the 118th player off the board, yeah, and the number 10 first baseman, Pasquantino is a great value pick.
Yeah, I like Vinny Pasquantino as well. I'd like to see if he can build off a strong last season. The name I'm going to go with as my love has no business being the 81st overall ranked player on the board, nor the 5th overall first baseman. It is Nick Kurtz, who is, in my opinion, a top 20 player. He was absolutely fantastic last year for the A's. While we might see a batting average regression because he had a 290 batting average and his expected batting average is only 245, he does everything you want to see from a power hitting first baseman. His barrel percentage was in the 98th percentile. His expected slugging was in the 95th. His average exit velocity was 92.7 miles an hour. That was 92nd percentile. He just destroys baseballs, and he's going to strike out a little bit, so he's better in a categories league probably, but he's also going to draw a fair share of walks. He was 90th percentile in walk percentage, so that'll balance it out a little bit. But for a guy with as much upside going into his second year as somebody like Nick Kurtz, the fact that he is the 81st overall player and the 5th first baseman off the board is blasphemous.
Yeah, I think we could be talking about Nick Kurtz as even an MVP candidate this year. I don't know if it's super likely because I think the A's are going to be bad once again. But as far as individual numbers go, he was absolutely unbelievable as a rookie last year. He doesn't even have to repeat those numbers to outperform his 81st ranked projection. I think, you get 90% of them, and he's still worthy of a top 40 pick.
Yeah, if you get 60% of him, he's probably a fair value at where he's going right now. Yeah, and the other thing I forgot to mention too, he plays in a super hitter friendly ballpark right now in Sacramento, which will bode extremely well for him. And he has power to all fields. I mean, majority of his homers last year were opposite field, believe it or not, which is extremely impressive for a young first baseman. So I think Nick Kurtz probably won't build on last season, but should at the very least come very, very close to replicating it. On the flip side, Braden, a first baseman you hate at their respective price.
Yeah, this is another relative hate. I'm gonna go with Freddie Freeman here. It was very difficult to find any first baseman that I, quote unquote, hated inside the top 200. And I'm not gonna go pick like a Miguel Vargas as a first baseman I hate, down below like what 215 or something like that. Freddie Freeman last year had good underlying numbers, had an expected batting average of 268, expected slugging percentage of 467. Both those are right around the 75th percentile. There's not a whole lot to hate about Freddie Freeman. But if I have to be super nitpicky, it's that the stolen base numbers have gone down from 2023. He had 23 stolen bases in 2023. He has 15 over the last 2 years combined. Has also not eclipsed 100 RBIs over the last 2 years. He is pretty durable. So it's, unlikely that you're going to regret taking Freddie Freeman. But I think there's higher upside numbers, or sorry, higher upside players than Freddie Freeman at the first base position. So if I have to pick one guy that I'm, I guess, semi-avoiding, it would be Freddie.
Yeah, and I don't mind that. I think it's fair to wonder if he's going to get bumped down in the batting order too with Kyle Tucker coming over. And yeah, his power and speed have just been on the decline as he's gotten older. So I think, a top 40 pick on Freddie Freeman is probably fair. But yeah, obviously with where he's going in these rankings, it's completely fine. But yeah, I think relatively speaking, that's a fair pick there. I'm going to go with Matt Olson, who is the 66th overall player, which, again, is way too low. I have him at 31 in my rankings. But I don't love him as the second first baseman off the board. I have him as my sixth first baseman. I don't really have a whole lot negative to say. I mean, I'm still willing to spend a third-round pick on Matt Olson. I wouldn't want to take him when there's guys like Bryce Harper, Vladdy Jr. Well, Vladdy will be the first one off the board, but guys like Nick Kurtz, Bryce Harper, maybe even Freddie Freeman in a points league. Rafael Devers will have first base as well. It's just a crowded position at the top with first base, and I would take pretty much all those guys over Matt Olson. So 66th overall, like I said, completely fine, but I like some other names that are behind him more.
Yeah, I would tend to lean the same way. We haven't seen Matt Olson come close to his 2023 numbers over the last 2 years. That was clearly an outlier season where he hit 283, had 54 home runs. His OPS was just shy of 1,000. Over the last 2 seasons, he's got 58 combined home runs, and his OPS has been right around the 825 line, averaging over those 2 seasons. So overall, still a very worthwhile pickup in round, 6 or 7. But overall, I don't know if I'd love him compared to the other first baseman.
Moving over to second base, which is always the thinnest position in fantasy baseball. Braden, who is a second baseman you love at where they're going?
I'm going to go with Luke Keschall here. We saw a lot of good out of Luke Keschall last year. Hit 302 in a very limited sample size. He appeared in 49 games, only had 4 home runs, had 14 doubles, though, of his 55 hits, 28 RBIs, and 14 stolen bases. Also was fairly good at avoiding strikeouts. Struck out at just a 14% clip last year. He was not qualified among batters for the StatCast metrics, but that would rank right around the 85th percentile, I believe. Has good chase numbers, whiff numbers as well. I think there's some regression coming to the batting average. I don't think he'll hit 302 again, but if he can hit 280, put up, let's say 60 or 70 RBIs and 40 stolen bases, Luke Keschall is vastly going to outperform his 177th ranked projection.
Yeah, and I don't know that he's going to hit over 300 again, but I mean, he was a consistent 290 hitter in the minors. So I don't think batting average is going to be an issue. You mentioned 40 base upside, and that's really all you're looking for at a second base spot. So where did you say where he was listed in terms of the ranking?
He is 177th overall and the number 13 second baseman.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, just for perspective, I think I'm a little bit low on Keschall. I have him at 119 and my sixth second baseman. So I would concur. That is a great value there. I like that a lot. The second baseman I'm going to go with is Bryce Turang, which I did not think I'd be in on Bryce Terang, but considering he's listed as the 105th overall player by ESPN, and I have him ranked at 79, I think it's completely fine. He's not going to be a huge power guy. I think he had like 12 home runs or something last year, and I'm pretty sure 9 of them came in 1 month. So that's probably not repeatable. I think he's usually or probably will be in the 5 to 10 homer range, kind of similar to Nico Horner. I think they're both very similar players, but he'll steal a lot of bases. He'll hit for a good batting average, and he'll hit pretty close to the top in a pretty good Brewers lineup. So I think Nico Horner. I think Bryce Terang as a sub top 100 pick. I don't know how the right phrasing for that. He's going outside the top 100. I think that's good value for him.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some regression probably coming to his hitting metrics. He jumped from a 665 OPS in 2024 to 794 last year. I would expect him to be in that low 700 range, but with how shallow the second base position is and the points upside he provides from stolen bases, I mean, you can basically count on him stealing 2 to 3 bases a week minimum. I think he's a very fine pick at 105.
And then on the flip side, Braden, who is a second baseman you just despise?
I hate this guy with every fiber of my being, and that's going to be Nico Horner as the 43rd overall player and the number 2 second baseman. He is a fine baseball player, but similar to Cal Raleigh, this is just a way too high of a draft price. Nico Horner has always been kind of a one-trick pony as a hitter, and that trick is hitting singles and doubles. He's like a three-tool version of Luis Arias. Last year, Horner had 178 hits, which is excellent. However, just 22.4% of those went for extra bases, and only 6.1% of those were triples or home runs. Yes, Nico Horner does add value with stolen bases. He has an average of 34 per year since 2023, but I don't really think he offers enough fantasy upside when you have to take him in the early 40s of your draft in round 4 or 5.
Yeah, I like Nico Horner, especially in a points league, but that's too high. I think I have him right around 100 in mind. Yeah, I have him at 102, the fourth second baseman. So I think 44 is a little bit steep for a guy who, like you said, does not have the power, is really just kind of a batting average and stolen base guy. But in a points league, he is more valuable or similar value to a categories league. But yeah, 44 that's too high. The name I'm going to go with at second base is the 61st overall player, according to ESPN, who I have at 127, and that is Jose Altuve. He's just losing it. I mean, that's really all it comes down to. His quality of contact has gotten worse each of the last 3 or 4 years. He's not hitting the ball as well, or as much, I should say. He's striking out more. I guess last season it was down a little bit, but historically speaking, he's striking out more. He's walking less. He's running less. The power he had 26 home runs last year. I'm trying to find his expected home runs number. That was at 19. He was very, very lucky that he played in a hitter-friendly right-handed stadium for Houston, in Houston. But yeah, the skills are just going away. The only things he did well last year was not swing and miss and not strike out. Everything else was pretty much below average. I mean, he had like 10 metrics that were sub 30 percentile. So Jose Altuve, it's been a great run, but for fantasy purposes, I am staying the hell away from him at 61.
Yeah, and even with the outfield eligibility, I don't think it's worthwhile to take Altuve here. You look at his batting average, it's the lowest he's posted. Sorry, last year's batting average was the lowest he's posted in his career, excluding the 2020 season, which obviously I throw out as an outlier. OPS was also below 800 once again. It was still at 771, which is, I guess, fine. But when you're picking a guy in, I guess, early round 7 or late round 6, you're just looking for more upside and a lot less downside than Jose Altuve has.
His average exit velocity last year was 85.1 miles an hour. That was in the bottom 4 percentile of all hitters. So not good, and we're likely not going to see a power uptick from him this year. But Braden, moving to third base, who is a third baseman that you love?
I'm going to bank on a bounce back from Austin Riley here. The draft cost isn't super phenomenal. He's the number 57 overall player and the number 5 third baseman. But if Austin Riley can put it all together once again and stay healthy, most importantly for the full course of the year, it's definitely possible that he performs at like a top 20 pick in fantasy baseball. In 2022 and 2023, he was absolutely phenomenal. Had I think that's 75 home runs over those years combined, had an average of 95 RBIs. The last 2 seasons have been much worse. He's also missed almost, I think, 100 games over those 2 seasons. He missed 60 games last year, missed 52 games the year before, so actually more than 100 games over those 2 years. The OPS dropped from 861 in 2023 all the way down to 737 last year. But looking at his Baseball Savant page, he's still at the top of the metrics in expected slugging percentage, exit velo, barrel rate, hard hit rate. There is potential for a Austin Riley bounce back. And if this is one guy I'm going to take a shot on, it's going to be him.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, the StatCast page doesn't lie. He still hits the ball extremely hard. He's going to barrel balls up. I think we see the power come back with a full season of health from Austin Riley. So despite the strikeouts being up a little bit, the walks being down, I'm not concerned. This is Austin Riley. And I mean, you're getting him later than you usually can. So I am definitely buying the dip on Austin Riley myself. The name I am going to go with, who is the 112th ranked player on ESPN, it is Maikel Garcia. And he is definitely better in a points league, I would say. He doesn't do a ton in terms of power. But he hits for a great average. He had 286 last year. He had an 800 OPS, stole 23 bases, had 81 runs, and just is a really, really solid hitter. I mean, he's got positional versatility as well. I know he obviously will have third base. He should have second base as well. Maybe shortstop. I'm not sure, but he will be able to play at more than one spot. He hits the ball hard. He doesn't swing and miss. He doesn't strike out. He gets on base. Everything you want in a points league. And he will steal some bases as well. So he's a very safe pick. And if you're getting him outside of the top 100 at a relatively thin third base spot this year, I think you're going to be happy with that.
Yeah, it's like Maikel Garcia's being priced like his 2025 season was pretty much a fluke, which I don't think is the case. Yeah, there was a big dramatic uptick in all of the hitting numbers. 2024, he was honestly pretty bad as a hitter, had just a 614 OPS, had 7 home runs. Did steal 37 bases, though. But then last year, the OPS jumps up to 800. He was an all-star, has 16 home runs. Do I think he's going to hit 16 home runs again? No. But I think he could be in that 10 to 12 range, and he could probably increase the stolen base numbers to make up for that. He's probably not going to have an 800 OPS once again. But if he can get in the 750 range, that is excellent value at the, 11th round, 12th round?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and I mean, it's not like just one of his halves of the season were completely great and the other was terrible. I mean, he hit 297 and 270. So I think he's a pretty safe pick going outside the top 100. Braden, who is a third baseman who just the thought of him makes you shiver with how much you despise them?
I'm sick of Eugenio Suarez. He's the 123rd overall player and the number 9 ranked third baseman. This just comes down to me thinking that his 49 home runs he hit in 2025 are not repeatable. Looking at his Baseball Savant page, there's a lot of blue on there. The barrel rate and the hard hit rate are good. The expected slugging percentage is pretty solid as well. But the average exit velo is right around the 50th percentile. The squared up rate was in the 18th percentile. And then a lot of his other metrics are just way too concerning. He was in the 4th percentile in whiff rate, 5th percentile in strikeout rate, 4th percentile of expected batting average. So yeah, while you still get the home run upside, Eugenio Suarez has a very low floor for fantasy baseball. And for that reason, I'm staying away from him at third base.
Yeah, I like that pick as well. I mean, if you take off 10% of his home runs from last year, and he's at, 44, 45, I mean, it doesn't sound like a whole lot, but, I mean, you're talking about bare minimum 30 points taken off from his season total. I think he's not going to hit probably more than 40 home runs again this year, and that's if he plays a full season. So I'm with you. I am also not a huge fan of the price for Eugenio Suarez. The name I'm going to go with is a guy who is always better in a points league, but I think this price is just too steep. It's Alex Bregman. He's the 31st overall ranked player, and I understand it, but at the same time, I think it's important to keep in mind the situation he's going to be in this year. He goes from a Red Sox team that is probably a better source of runs and RBIs than it will be in Chicago. It plays great for Alex Bregman, who lost the ball up in the air and just can bank it off of the green monster in left field, where now he goes to Wrigley Field that does not play nearly as well to right-handed hitters. And I think the numbers themselves just kind of took a bit of a dive last year. The expected batting average was a little bit lower, just a little bit. The quality of contact was largely the same, but I think going from Fenway to Wrigley will hurt that a little bit. He's still a very safe player who I like in fantasy, but not at 31. I would be much more inclined to take him if he was going around pick 70. But if he's going at 31, I will not be drafting him.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat with Alex Bregman. I was just taking a quick look at the park factor for right-handed hitters. Last year, Fenway Park was the seventh best park for righties. Wrigley Field was down at 27th, and for whatever reason, Baseball Savant only goes to 28. I don't think they have data for Sacramento, or I guess I don't know what the other stadium is on there that I'm missing. But either way, Wrigley Field is much worse for right-handed hitters than Fenway is. So I think that's going to contribute to a dip in Bregman's numbers. And even last year was definitely, I don't know if I'd say an outlier, but it was much better than his 2024 season. And he also missed almost 50 games. There's plenty of reasons to avoid Bregman at that draft price.
And then let's shift on over to shortstop. Braden, who is a shortstop you love at their price?
This was a position where I didn't particularly love any of the guys. I almost went with Bobby Witt, but I wanted to go with a player that everyone would have an opportunity to draft. So I went with Ellie De La Cruz. The underlying numbers last year weren't phenomenal. His overall raw numbers were, respectable. 264 batting average, 440 slugging percentage, 777 OPS. Had 22 home runs, 86 RBIs, 37 stolen bases. Nowhere near where the numbers were in 2024, with the exception of batting average being a little bit higher. He had 67 stolen bases in 2024. I'd like to see him get back to 50 stolen bases this year. There's definitely concern. Like his expected WOBA, expected batting average, expected slugging percentage, all those are right around the 50th percentile. There's nothing he really excels at hitting wise on the Baseball Savant page, but there's plenty of upside there. And in 2024, we did see a pretty bright red StatCast page in the barrel percentage rate, the hard hit rate, the average exit velo stuff. So there's potential for a bounce back, and Ellie De La Cruz could be a league winner if that bounce back happens.
Yeah, and as someone who had Ellie De La Cruz last year in our league, it was really kind of a tale of two halves. He was great in the first half, and then I think he had a leg injury the second half, which kind of impacted his numbers. But I expect much more similar to 2024 Ellie De La Cruz this year. And yeah, the fact that he's going that late is kind of nuts, in my opinion. So if you're getting him that late, shout out to you. Congrats. The name I'm going to go with is Corey Seager. And I do have to say, I think we have opposite opinions on shortstop. I love where everybody's going, quite honestly. Corey Seager especially. He's probably going to miss a little bit of time. He does every year. But there's something nice about the only downside of a guy being the health, because they can always stay healthy for a season. You never know when it's going to come. Byron Buxton for our Twins did it last year, and he was fantastic. He's going, much higher than he usually does. All Corey Seager needs to do is stay healthy, because when he's on the field, he's a top 15, top 20 hitter in all of baseball. His xWOBA, expected batting average, expected slugging percentage, average exit velocity, barrel percentage, and hard hit percentage were all 92nd percentile or higher last year. Corey Seager is a damn good hitter, and if he's on the field, he's going to be, a top 30 overall type of player. And if he stays healthy for a full season, he's going to be a top 30 overall player for the full season. So all you need is the health, and that's something I am willing to take the upside risk on the downside risk on at pick 134.
Yeah, the injury risk is already baked into his ADP. Really, there's very few knocks on Corey Seager when he is on the field. If I have to nitpick one, it's the RBI numbers. In 2023, he had 96 RBIs. In 2024, he had 74, and last year he had just 50. So even if you're getting, let's say, 160 games out of Corey Seager, you're probably talking about maybe 80 RBIs over the course of the year, which is still a very solid number. It's just not something that's super high upside, but at the same time, he's going to score plenty of runs, going to get on base plenty of times, has great power upside. So I love Corey Seager as a pick here in rounds, 13 or 14.
And then Braden, who was the shortstop that you decided on hating their guts?
Yeah, well, I've always hated this guy's guts since I decided to do these notes here. I'm going to go with Trey Turner. He is the 86th overall player and the number 7 shortstop. He vastly outperformed his expected numbers last year. Had a 304 batting average. The expected batting average was still fine at 270, but his expected WOBA was 44th percentile. Expected slugging percentage was 41st percentile. Exit velo was 39th percentile. The hard hit rate was 44th percentile. The walk rate was only in the 30th percentile. There were plenty of red flags with Trey Turner here. Did have an 812 OPS last year, but I think we're talking about a guy who might regress down to like a 750 OPS this year, which is still fine. But if I'm taking a guy at Trey Turner's spot at the shortstop position, I need a little bit more certainty, and he offers a lot of downside with, basically like his upside is that he performs exactly how he did last year, and even that, like, I don't think is a massive jump up from the 86th overall player.
Yeah, and I tend to agree. Trey Turner's a weird one for me because as he's gotten older, his power has gone down and his speed has gone up. He stole 36 bases last year. He was in the 100th percentile for sprint speed, but it seemed like everything else took a decline. So I don't fully know. I don't mind the price on Trey Turner. In my rankings, I have him at 42, so I'm actually quite okay with it. But I think there's a lot of downside relative to that where, if the speed isn't where it was last year and the power continues to go down, I mean, we could be talking about Trey Turner as a guy that finishes outside the top 100. So I do certainly understand the downside risk. The name I'm going to go with, and I mentioned I have no problem for the most part with the shortstop rankings. It's just where he is at in terms of the positional rankings. It's Mookie Betts, who is the 49th ranked player and the 4th shortstop. I have him right behind Trey Turner at 43, but as my 6th shortstop. I do think that that Mookie Betts rather, has the much better shot of regaining to form than Trey Turner does, because I know he had some sort of injury early in the season last year. It might have even been in spring training that I think hampered him a little bit in the first half of the year. But this is, a guy hitting right in the middle to the top of the best lineup in baseball. He hit 280 in the second half of the season, much more like the Mookie Betts we're accustomed to seeing. And the extra base hits were a little bit more where we're used to. Still kind of down for Mookie Betts standards, but they were better in the second half of the year. So I think as he got back closer to full health, he regained much closer to the usual Mookie Betts we're accustomed to. So I have him as my 43rd overall player. At 49, I don't mind taking that risk. But relative to the other shortstops, I don't think he's the fourth guy that should be going off the board at the position.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. And I think I gotta double check this quick, but I think Mookie Betts is probably also going to have other positional eligibility too, right? Is he going to have maybe second base or outfield at all?
I think it's just, it should be just shortstop. He played 148 games with short last year.
Okay, I guess it's possible he maybe plays second base during the year and gets it, but I guess initially, I'm probably more on the side of like lukewarm with him. If he has that second base eligibility or the outfield eligibility throughout the season, at that point, I think he's excellent value here. But as of right now, I do think there's a good chance he bounces back. It's hard to hate a guy here in that spot, but overall, I guess I tend to lean your way as far as ranking him. It's, I think, 6th overall shortstop in your rankings?
Yeah. And I mean, it's just for reference, in my rankings, I have about a 12 overall gap between Seager and Betts. So in a draft like this, I am bypassing Betts every single time and just taking Corey Seager in, the 11th or 12th round. I am a much bigger fan of that value there. Moving on over to the outfield. There are a lot of outfielders, a lot of whom I disagreed with their rankings. This was probably the second spot behind first base that I thought the rankings were the worst at. But Braden, who is an outfielder that you love at these rankings?
Yeah, well, I'm going to go with Tyler Soderstrom here, who, Sam, take a guess on where he is in ESPN's overall rankings.
Oh boy. I know that there's some every year that it's just like ridiculous and they're buried in literally the hundreds. I'm going to say Tyler Soderstrom is the 291st player.
Actually, kind of close. He is somehow not in the top 300. Wow. He is the number 19 first baseman and the number 68 outfielder. For comparison, his ADP in underdog best ball drafts right now is 38.5. So about a 20-ish round difference, which is absolutely unbelievable. His triple slash last year was 276, 346, 474, had an 820 OPS, and you can't even use playing in Sacramento as an excuse. He was actually better across the board on the road in 2025, hit 25 home runs, knocked in 93 RBIs, and scored 75 runs. His hitting metrics are bright red in a lot of categories. The xWOBA, expected batting average, expected slugging percentage, all in the 69th percentile or higher. Average xVelo is 84th percentile, hard hit rate 86th percentile, and he's still relatively average in the strikeout and walk rates as well. On top of all this, he was a Gold Glove finalist last year. You don't get points for defense in 99.99% of ESPN fantasy leagues unless you add that as an option. But this means he's not going to get subbed out of games for poor fielding. Going to get more at bats, more chances to fantasy points. And in addition to having outfield eligibility, Soderstrom also has first base eligibility. For him going outside the top 300 in their default rankings, that might be the most blasphemous thing I've ever seen in ESPN's fantasy baseball rankings.
And that's a high bar. I mean, there is some blasphemous shit every single year. But yeah, if Soderstrom's going outside the top 300, I think it might come down to which one of us ends up drafting him. Because yeah, that's pretty absurd. So I love that pick there. The name I'm going to go with is Roman Anthony, and I'm not the biggest Roman Anthony guy. Just for what it's worth, I have him ranked. Where did I have him? I have him at number 53 overall as my 16th outfielder. He's going as, I think, number 109 I had written down on ESPN. Yeah, 109. I see a little bit of Nolan Jones potential in Roman Anthony's game in the sense of he hits the ball really hard, but he drastically outperformed his expectations last year in terms of batting average. His actual batting average was 292. His expected was 258. He swung and missed a lot. He struck out quite a bit, which is not what we're used to seeing out of Roman Anthony from the minors. He did everything else well. Like I said, he destroyed baseballs. I mean, his average exit velocity was 94.5 miles an hour. Doesn't lift the ball a whole lot, so the power's probably not going to be crazy high. He's not going to be a 30 home run guy, I wouldn't think. But assuming he doesn't bottom out like Nolan Jones does, this is a very, very safe player. He's going to get on base at a high clip. He's going to draw a lot of walks. He has a little bit of speed, only 4 stolen bases last year, but I think we could see that number higher in 2026. So at 109, even if he does take a bit of a downturn compared to what we saw last year, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, and Roman Anthony, he didn't qualify for StatCast, but a lot of his metrics are towards the top in a lot of categories you like to see. His expected WOBA was 372, probably puts him around the 87th, 88th percentile. The average xVelo might even be the 100th percentile, honestly. Hard hit rate was super high as well. Barrel rate was phenomenal. Draws a ton of walks at a 13.2% walk rate. He is an extremely safe player to draft at 109, and he offers upside to be a top 20 fantasy baseball player. There is no reason he should not be going at least in the 50s.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Braden, an outfielder that you hate.
I absolutely despise Jurickson Profar for fantasy baseball this year. He is the 117th overall player and the number 27 outfielder. Maybe it's not all that bold of a take to be fading a guy who's an outfielder 3, but I don't understand why you'd even draft Profar right now. After returning from a PED suspension that inflated his power in 2024, his batting average tanked. More importantly, he was not in a good spot with his underlying metrics either. In 2024, the expected WOBA and expected batting average were both 92nd percentile. The expected slugging percentage was 70th percentile. The chase rate, whiff rate, striker rate, and walkout rate were all great. Those numbers continued last year, but the expected batting average absolutely cratered to 16th percentile. Expected WOBA was 52nd percentile. The expected slugging percentage was 31st percentile. Did not hit the ball nearly as hard in 2025. There's a lot of downside with Jurickson Profar, and I don't think he has almost any upside beyond what he did last year, which was not good for the most part.
Yeah, I think 2024 Jurickson Profar was the outlier. I just don't think he's ever going to get back to that. I think he could be a guy who's platooned at some point this year. And I think there's a lot more downside than there is upside with Jurickson Profar. So I'm with you. I like that pick. The name I'm going to go with, I don't hate. I certainly don't love it. It's Cody Bellinger. who is going as the 44th overall player, according to ESPN. Going back to New York is the best thing he could have done for fantasy baseball purposes because he hit 29 home runs last year with that short porch in New York. His expected home runs was 28, but I mean, looking at a lot of these places and what his numbers would be, I mean, it's a lot of 24 homers, 25, 22 in Kansas City. So he outperformed the power numbers a little bit, but being in New York where his expected home runs was 33 is a fantastic thing for Cody Bellinger. His batting average last year was 272. He got on base at a 334 mark. He doesn't swing and miss a lot. He doesn't strike out much. He draws a fair amount of walks. He doesn't hit the ball extremely hard, but like I said, for a stadium with a short porch, for a team that has as many offensive threats as the Yankees do, he's going to have plenty of power and runs and RBI output. So I think 44 is still a little too high for my liking, but it's not horrible, especially being back in New York for Bellinger.
Yeah, I tend to lean the same way. Bellinger's a guy I would say I'm fairly neutral on. If he gets first base eligibility during the season, which is definitely a possibility, he becomes a guy I love. He played 7 games at first base last year, so I assume he lost it over the offseason. Ben Rice was predominant first baseman, him and Paul Goldschmidt. Is Goldschmidt still there? Or is he gone?
He is gone.
Okay, so maybe there's more first base opportunities for Bellinger this year, but at the very least, he's not going to have first base eligibility to start the year. I think that's a knock on him. I would say the numbers he had last year are fairly repeatable. We've seen Bellinger have a nice kind of second arc after going to Chicago and then New York. So overall, I wouldn't say I hate Cody Bellinger at pick 44, but there are other outfielders I probably prefer at draft cost.
And then moving to the pitchers, and like I said, with pitchers in a points league, they are valued more, so they're all going to be pushed up a little bit. They're all very close together, at least the starting pitchers are on ESPN. So I'm going to go off positional ranking for those. But starting with starting pitcher Braden, who is a starting pitcher that you love at their cost?
I'm going to go with Cade Horton here. He is the 66th ranked starting pitcher and the number 214 overall player. Cade Horton could be a guy who turns out to be a complete zero for you for a lot of the year. His underlying metrics indicate that maybe there's some regression from last year's 267 ERA and 109 whip. But overall, I still think there's enough upside. He had an expected ERA of 388. His chase rate was 65th percentile. The walk rate was 69th percentile. Does give up a decent amount of hard contact. He had a 10% barrel rate allowed versus a 7.2% league average. And he allowed a 41.3% hard hit rate versus the 37% league average. But overall, I still think Cade Horton is an excellent pick. Had a FIP of 358. The hits per 9 were at just 7.2. Isn't going to strike out a ton of batters. He had 97 strikeouts and 118 innings last year. If he could increase that, that'd be a very good sign. At that point, he becomes a lot more valuable. But even as is, I think he's a very safe option for kind of a depth piece in your starting rotation.
Yeah, and where did you say he was ranked among starting pitchers?
66th.
66. Yeah, I have him at 52 in my ranking, so I like that a lot. He's not going to be a guy that strikes out a guy per inning, most likely, but he's going to do everything else well. So I'm a very big fan of that. I like Cade Horton a lot. The name I'm going to go with is Christopher Sanchez, who is the 24th overall player and the 12th starting pitcher. I have Christopher Sanchez as my number 4 starting pitcher. I mean, he just is a absolute force in a points league because of the innings that he's going to eat up. 181 innings in 2024, 202 innings in 2025. I mean, the fact that you're getting him as the 12th starting pitcher, I mean, you could have him as your SP2, which is just ridiculous. His StatCast page is off the charts. That might be a little extreme. It's very, very good. He's above average in every single metric. He does give up a little bit of hard contact here and there. Doesn't get as many ground balls as you would like. Still above average, though, in terms of getting ground balls. But gets a ton of swing and miss. Doesn't walk many guys. And actually does get a lot of ground balls. I was looking at hard hit percentage as the one that I said he doesn't do great. He's 96th percentile in terms of ground ball percentage. So he does not give up many homers. He's going to keep the ball in the yard. And he's got a pretty solid Phillies defense behind him. So I think there's a lot to like about Sanchez. Even if he doesn't get to that 200 inning mark again this year, I think you can be comfortable that he's going to get to 180, 190 if he's fully healthy.
Yeah, I like Sanchez. My My strategy in fantasy baseball drafts is typically to punt pitcher a lot of the time. I think you can find enough value later in drafts. So I don't know if I'm drafting him in round 2 or 3, but I do think he's an excellent player. I do have to pivot our conversation here. We had some breaking news within the last couple of minutes. The Minnesota Vikings have fired GM Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah. So the Minnesota sports teams have now fired two GMs in the same day after Derek Falvey was fired earlier. I figured I'd bring that up here.
I appreciate that. Yeah, wow, that's a heck of a morning here in St. Paul. Yeah, wow, two GMs in the same day. That's yeah, I don't know. I don't know that we've seen that before anywhere. That's interesting. I wonder why now you do that. 3 months before the draft. I'm not sure. That's an interesting one. But yeah, we'll talk about that more off camera, I assume. But let's get back to the starting pitchers. Braden, who is a starting pitcher that you hate?
I loathe Blake Snell, at least at his price tag. I don't like it for two reasons. First is the injury risk. In 10 career seasons, Blake Snell has only had 3 seasons where he's made 25 or more starts. In the last 2 seasons, he's made a combined 31 starts, only had 11 starts in 2025. Secondly, the Dodgers have such an embarrassment of riches, and particularly in the starting rotation and the bullpen, that they're going to be extremely cautious with their superstar arms. We might see a 6-man rotation, and I think a lot of Blake Snell's starts are going to be like 5 innings at most. You get like 5 innings, he'll throw like 80 to 90 pitches, and they'll pull him. He's an excellent player for sure. Looking at his StatCast page, there's a ton of bright red. But overall, I don't think he's going to get enough of the counting stats. Last year, let's say hypothetically, Blake Snell pitches about 130 innings, which might even be an aggressive estimate because he's only done that twice over the course of his career. We're looking at maybe 180 strikeouts, which is still excellent, but I don't know. I'm not in love with the price tag here.
Yeah, I would agree. And the Dodgers are so weird because a general rule of thumb for pitchers in fantasy is you want guys that are on good teams so that they'll get you wins, especially in a points league like this. But with the Dodgers, as you said, I don't think it's likely. I think it's going to be a 6-man rotation over the full course of the year. And with how much depth they have at starting pitcher, like if Blake Snell has a minor injury, they can afford to hold him out for 2 months because of the amount of depth that they have. So they're not going to be, pushing to get him as many innings as possible. They're going to be pushing to get him healthy for October. So I think with all Dodgers pitchers, I'm staying away, even though they're going to be a great source of wins. They're not going to eat up a lot of innings, and they're never going to have 2 starts a week. They just won't. So I'm with you. I think Blake Snell is a good pitcher to hate at the cost. The name I am going to go with is Freddie Peralta, who is going off the board as let me pull up my notes here quick, the 21st overall player and the 10th starting pitcher. I have him as my SP19 in a points league because Freddie Peralta, as good as he was last year, he's not going to be a guy who is getting up to that 185, 195 inning mark. He had 176 innings last year, and I'm pretty confident that's a career high. He also had his career best season last year. He had a 2.70 ERA, a 3.43 xERA. Got a ton of swing and miss, got a ton of strikeouts, as he always does. He will be a 200 strikeout pitcher if he's healthy. But for a points league where you need guys to go deep in games and, eat up a ton of innings every single time, that's not what Freddie Peralta is going to do. And I think the Mets are probably going to be a 6-man rotation with the new addition of him. So I don't know. SP10 in the back of the second round, early third, is not something I'm willing to do with Freddie Peralta.
Yeah, I tend to lean the same way. This kind of also goes towards my strategy of avoiding pitchers early on. But Freddie Peralta, there is also some concern about him having like an outlier bad year. His walk rate was in the 30th percentile last year. The barrel rate was in the 32nd percentile. The ground ball rate was 25th percentile. It's possible if those numbers repeat, we see a year where Freddie Peralta gives up an absurd amount of home runs compared to what we might expect. And at that point, his value tanks. I mean, he's still a very good pitcher. I think even with that, it would be an outlier season where I would be 100% in on him in 2027 if that happens. But there is more risk and volatility with him than I'd love in round 2 or 3.
And then we'll wrap things up with the relievers. Braden, who is a reliever that you love?
I'll go with Josh Hader here. I think he probably should be the number one relief pitcher, but he's the RP5, the 50th overall player on the board. He was in the 100th percentile among relievers in expected ERA and expected batting average last year. The ERA, the expected ERA was at 2.00, which indicates that even his 2.05 actual ERA is going to be even better this year. His expected batting average allowed was just 149. The chase rate, the whiff rate, and the strikeout rate were all in the 99th percentile. Had 28 saves in 48 appearances last year. I think the Astros should be good once again. There's a chance Hader picks up 40 plus saves, and getting him as the RP5 is going to look like a steal come October.
Yeah, and I got to move Hader up my rankings. I have him as my ninth relief pitcher, albeit only like 20 spots behind the number one guy. But I do need to move him up a little bit. The only reason that I was a little bit lower on him is because I'm not sure how he's going to come back from that shoulder injury he had last season in his pitching arm. I assume it's nothing major, and it sounds like he could have maybe come back for, a deep postseason run if Houston made it that far. So it's probably nothing. But yeah, that's the only real concern that I have with Josh Hader at this point. The reliever that I love is Johan Duran, who is the 53rd overall player, which quite honestly, for my liking, is a little bit high, but he is the sixth reliever, and I think that he is much better than the sixth overall relief pitcher. He had a 2.51 expected ERA last year, a 2.06 actual ERA, and his StatCast page is fantastic. He was among the best pitchers in the MLB in terms of ground balls last year. He was 100th percentile with a 65.4% ground ball percentage. He has always been a great ground ball pitcher, which is fantastic for a closer. He's going to strike out a lot of guys. He's not going to walk many. And being on a Phillies team that is one of the best teams in baseball and should have one of the best records in baseball, you assume there's going to be several save opportunities for Duran. It's not a situation like last year or 2 years ago where you got to worry about Griffin Jacks stealing a save or two here and there from him. He is the firm, set closer in Philadelphia, and he's as good a bet as any this year, in my opinion, to finish with 40 saves. So getting him as the sixth reliever, even if it's a little bit high overall for my liking, I think that's a great positional value for Duran.
Yeah, I would concur. Last year, he had 16 saves in Minnesota and then 16 saves in, 2.5 months? Actually, not even 2.5 months, I think 2 months in Philadelphia. Yeah. So there's a good chance he puts up maybe even 50 saves over the course of 2026. The ERA numbers were remarkably similar as well. Had a 2.01 ERA in Minnesota, a 2.18 ERA in Philadelphia. Overall, I think there's very little risk with Duran. Relievers are always volatile for fantasy baseball, but if you can pinpoint one guy as a safe bet, it's probably Johan Duran.
And then to wrap things up, Braden, a reliever that you hate.
I'm going to go with Ryan Helsley here, and it's not like he's super high up in the relief pitcher rankings. He's the number 16 relief pitcher and the number 106 overall player in ESPN's rankings. But last year left a really sour taste in my mouth with Ryan Helsley, especially after he got traded to the New York Mets. With St. Louis, he was respectable, had a 3 ERA, had 21 saves in his 2.5 months there, 3.5 months there. And then with the Mets was absolutely atrocious. He had a 7.2 ERA, had 20 innings pitched over the course there. Gave up 4 home runs compared to 4 home runs during his 36 innings in St. Louis. His StatCast page is not good. Had an expected ERA of 4, which I guess is better than his 4.5 actual ERA. The walk rate was in the 19th percentile. There is very little to like about Ryan Helsley. And he's going to Baltimore, which, maybe it's good, but last year the Orioles were atrocious, and you don't know how many save opportunities he could get with Baltimore this year. They could go anywhere from 100 wins to 75 wins. So there's too much volatility for him for me to be comfortable taking him.
Yeah, and I share that same sentiment as you, so I don't have a whole lot to add. The name I'm going to throw out there is, I'm not super comfortable doing it because he is probably the best relief pitcher in all of baseball, but it's Edwin Diaz, who is the 36th overall player and the number 2 reliever in fantasy. The only reason I don't like this is because I cannot say with absolute certainty that Edwin Diaz is going to be the primary closer. I mean, I know he'll be the primary closer. I don't know that he's going to be the only closer that the Dodgers have, because this Dodgers bullpen is without a doubt the best in baseball. Like, it's not even remotely close to anybody else being near them. They signed Tanner Scott last offseason. They have Alex Vesia. They have Blake Trinan. They have Brock Stewart, who will be back at some point. Like, you have 5 closing options that can legit come in and close the game out at any point. You have Will Klein, who was sensational, and I think it was Game 7 of the World Series late. So they could give him more late game opportunities. Anthony Banda, Brusdar Graterol. All of these guys are capable of shutting things down in the 9th inning. So I can't say with the utmost certainty that Edwin Diaz is going to get to 25, 30 saves. He probably will, but I don't know that. And so I'm not willing to spend a 4th-round pick and, one of the top 2 relievers as my primary guy when I'm not certain of what I'm getting. So Edwin Diaz, phenomenal pitcher. I'm not sold for fantasy purposes.
Yeah, it's the exact same thing I said about Blake Snell, where they just have so many other options. They don't need to overtax their arms. I would be shocked if Edwin Diaz pitches back-to-back days at any point in the season, honestly, which you can't say about any other closer in baseball. Fangraphs does have him projected for 36 saves. I don't know if he's going to hit that marker. And additionally, it's possible the Dodgers just win so many games by more than 3 runs, where there's not even save opportunities to have in the first place. I don't know, we could be talking about Edwin Diaz having like a 1.5 ERA, striking out like 14 batters per 9 innings, and still being like a middle of the pack fantasy relief pitcher just because there's not enough save opportunities for him. So taking him as the 36th overall player is way, way too steep of a cost.
And I'm trying to find the Dodgers stats from last year. Okay, here we go. Last year's save leader for the Dodgers was Tanner Scott with 23. You also had Vesia with 5, another guy with 4, Kirby Yates with 3, and then a bunch of other guys that had a couple saves as well. So Diaz, better than all those guys. I think he's got a much better shot of being the primary closer than somebody like Tanner Scott did last year. But I think it's more likely that we're talking about him as a 25 save guy than a 40 save guy when it's all said and done.